What's up, everybody? What's up, MGTOW? Let's look at an older social theory which could shed some light on MGTOW and society's current condition. Sociologists have looked into the problems with modern life, depression, suicide, and crime. I think adding a MGTOW lens to the research can add to this topic. As the modern man is freed from traditional duties due to technology and society, I think it's interesting that MGTOW looked to evolutionary psychology to find direction in the new world emerging. It seems as though society as a whole, when removed from social constraints, quickly returns to a more primitive psychological state. Cooperation is replaced with a self-centric and tribal attitude of survival. Emotions and instincts are followed to provide guidance when social boundaries are almost non-existent. Past sociologists have tried to explain the phenomena of suicide, depression, and crime in modern industrial societies. It's a good question to ask, since modern societies have provided humans some of the most productive societies. Why are there such high rates of suicide and crime? So, what is anomie? Men face the idea of anomie early in life. Maybe the first time you didn't make the team, or realized the girl you wanted was quote-unquote out of your league. We are all faced with wants and sometimes even needs that are out of reach. On the other hand, women learn that using the skills of socializing and seduction, they can manipulate people to get things which appear out of their reach. Women don't usually learn till later on in life their own intrinsic value in the hierarchy of society. Quote, "The contemporary English understanding of the word anomie can accept greater flexibility in the word norm, and some have used the idea of normlessness to reflect a similar situation to the idea of anarchy. But as used by Emile Durkheim and later theorists, anomie is a reaction against or retreat from the regulatory social controls of society and is completely separate from the concept of anarchy, which consists of the absence of the roles of rulers and submitted." End quote. Well, that doesn't explain much. Let's look at Durkheim's work a little more. Quote, "The 19th century French pioneer sociologist Emile Durkheim borrowed the word from French philosopher Jean-Marie Guyot and used it in his influential book Suicide, 1897, outlining the social and not individual causes of suicide, characterized by rapid changes of the standard or values of societies, often erroneously referred to as normlessness, and an associated feeling of alienation and purposelessness. He believed that anomie is common when the surrounding society has undergone significant changes in its economic fortunes, whether for better or for worse, and generally when there is a significant discrepancy between the ideological theories and values commonly professed and what is actually achievable in everyday life. This was contrary to previous theories on suicide, which generally maintained that suicide was precipitated by negative events in a person's life and their subsequent depression." End quote. So basically, anomie is a psychological state which occurs due to cognitive dissonance. In the modern world, we have moved away from the social norms of being the average Joe type to aspiring to be in the top 10% of some field, be it finance, sports, business, or whatever. While this is great for the top people, the rest of society is forced to accept their ineptness to be at the top. Being in the top 10%, which is not attainable by the overwhelming majority of people, has become an ideology. This is evidenced by many people associating being rich, powerful, or athletic to success. The normal day-to-day living which most people experience is described as a struggle, a hustle, scraping by, and so on. Again, the identifying features of modern success are perceived as being a capitalist, i.e. having passive income streams, not having to work but having money, having no boss or owning your own company, being a paid athlete, celebrity, or some other activity that is enjoyable. It seems that the more someone has to work and the less enjoyable the job is, the less valuable the job is. But realistically, the intrinsic value to society of a painter is much less than that of a sewage manager. The amount of labor a bricklayer does compared to a CEO is confusing also. So the value of a person in society has been deflated for most to inflate the value of a few at the top. The people in the system validate the social norms by paying into the system, further inflating the value of the people involved in the system. For instance, men pay the majority of taxes which then support laws which give women rights over men in areas such as reproduction and domestic disputes. The men agree to the system and to the by proxy overvaluation of women, not on an individual basis, but through a subconscious choice made by not disagreeing with the system. It seems that in the past, a lot of the norms were held together by specific social constructs and rules of an individual culture. Without these strict norms, for instance, binding binding marriage contracts, people seem to revert back to a more primitive tournament-style system. Add in perceived or not overpopulation, automation, and a few other factors, and the value of a person is deflated in this kind of a system. In other systems, there were or are values which were attainable by most people. For instance, in a religious setting, any person can display values of honesty, charity, etc. And in the religious setting, this person could be considered a good person or a person with some worth. In the modern system, where the only social value is money, each person's worth is only relative to another person's worth. So to have a sense of self-worth in a system of relativity is very hard. When men lose their relation to society, either through divorce, job loss, homelessness, or false accusations, their self-worth can be extremely affected. This is one of the reasons MGTOW is cool. It teaches you how to form your own value system outside of the group worth. When you look at all this from a MGTOW perspective, you can clearly see what the social norms are. For men, it's maintaining a high-status job, fit body, car, house, and having extra spending cash. For women, the standards of beauty and their sexual choices are a big part of a woman's social standing. Women spend tons of money on all types of makeup, body enhancements, tanning, hair, and other things to make themselves look more appealing. Women are also ranked on their sexual status more stringently, i.e. virgin, single mom, promiscuous, faithful, etc. As more and more people are forced to meet unrealistic standards, the health of society is affected. I think it's one of the reasons we see ideas like MGTOW, men's rights, and so on popping up, as the standards become so unrealistic for the majority of the population. Again, women suffer in a different way. They have a rapidly deteriorating social status, usually when they hit the wall around 30 to 35, and until that time, they are at the forefront of pushing the unrealistic social expectations on men. They look for the top 20% of men. They ignore or use the 80% of men who are the real, normal guys of society. The women dream of meeting a top-tier man and become sad and depressed as their hypergamy makes them miss out on more realistic opportunities. I think this is part of the reason women are less happy now than ever. Besides being confused about social norms, they are realizing that the top-tier men are really out of reach, and having an MBA doesn't make them more attractive to men. The media and consumerism have pushed people to buy and make more useless crap for instant gratification. Women are at the forefront of consumer spending, which suggests they buy more into the dream than men do as a whole. Since men are expected to produce much more for women, and also maintain their status in the hierarchy, you can see how men are more likely to commit crime or suicide. Society doesn't want to help men, because the whole point of society is men fighting against each other while women look on and fuck the winners of the day. So when a guy feels as though he has lost or is defeated, then depression and suicide are more possible. This is probably why divorced men are at such high risk. Not only is it viewed that the man is at fault for maintaining a good relationship, divorce usually comes at a time when the man is already facing some hardship. When these multiple factors add up, then the chances of suicide are much higher. So if we look at this idea of enemy, we can see how the pressure of overinflated social norms can cause cognitive dissonance in members of society. This in turn leads people to become depressed and have low self-esteem. In men, the loss of the everyday man's social norms makes them feel inadequate, depressed, and we can see how any losses in social status lead to suicide or crime. On the other side, women on average seem to be stuck in a state of constantly expecting more growth and purchasing power. They look at the average man as lower than average due to the inflated value of the minority of hyperinflated top-tier men in society. Women just can't seem to get their heads around the idea that the average men who approach them are actually the kind of guys they can get. The cognitive dissonance of their own low self-esteem and desires to attract top-tier men for long-term relationships and breeding manifest in a lot of different forms. Women being left to follow their instincts unrestricted has led to the breakdown of any type of family, and they have shown that they don't want long-term marriages on average. Women have overwhelmingly shown that they want men to pay for them to live in exchange for a short-term marriage and bearing a child or two, which is fine, but if that's the case, then marriage should be revised to also follow the trend that women are setting now. Anyway, these are just some ideas to put out there. It seems that the gynocentric nature of society combined with an overinflated sense of social norms has given rise to the disconnected nature of society as it is now.